Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. On this video I'm going to give you 3 techniques on how you can perform stand-up comedy with absolutely no material written or pre-planned. Now that's not to say that you shouldn't pre-plan your sets, you absolutely should, but this is going to give you ideas on how you can leave the written material and instead engage the audience with things they all have in common, which is in that room and which is talking to the audience themselves. I'm going to give you 3 examples and 3 easy to follow techniques. So in your next comedy set, you can leave your written material for whenever you feel you need to win the audience over. Because sometimes we're in the middle of a written material and you might sense that you're losing the audience a little bit. Perhaps there's too much information rather than jokes in your set. And in order to get the audience on board again, we need to sacrifice a little bit of material and be in the room and be more in the moment with them. So this video is all about that. I've been giving feedback videos on this channel, and if you are interested in those videos, all you have to do is drop down into the description box and check out the email. Send me an email and I'll send you all the information you need. Very simply, you send me in footage of yourself performing a 5 or 10 minute clip and I'll send you back a 30-40 minute feedback on a positive critique of what works for you and what you could be doing a little more of. So they've been real beneficial to people and I'm very grateful to do it. So that's been very successful, and this video is based off that because I've noticed what's happening is newcomers, new comedians are having way too much prepared material, and of that material, way too much of it is informative, as in people are wasting too much time expressing who it is they are rather than saying a very basic thing about themselves and then getting to the punchline. And if that's going to be a continuous problem, that's fine. Writing will get better over time. But this video is about how do we engage the audience for those moments that might seem a little bit flat in our set. So if we incorporate these techniques, you're going to benefit from it. So here, let's just jump right in. So the first one, and I always say this in many, many videos, but I will say it again and again and again because it's so important. And the great thing is, it could not be easier to do this technique. And this is just making humorous observations about the room you are performing comedy in, about the venue, about something you noticed when you arrived on site to perform at that event. Now, what you do is you walk into the venue, you greet the booker or the MC or whoever it is that's having a midlife crisis and is running this gig, and then you sit down and you take out a little shitty piece of paper and you jot down a couple of things, 2 or 3 things you notice about the room, and then you write something funny about them. It doesn't have to be incredibly hilarious, it just needs to be a humorous observation, and you're going to open with that. You're not going to do your written material at the very top of the show. You're going to open with that observation. You're going to welcome the audience, you're going to say thanks for the round of applause if you're lucky enough to get one, and then you're going to do whatever it was you wrote down on that piece of paper. And what this does is it connects everybody together because everybody has that one thing in common. The chances are they probably noticed it too, only they don't have a microphone and they didn't have your brain and your way of expressing yourself with that humorous point. And the more often you do this, the funnier the point is going to be, the funnier you're going to be able to come up with, things to say about the room. So, what can we do with this throughout the set? We can continuously come back to this. Let's say you noticed a lot of things about the room, and the more the room is set up against comedy, the better. And the good news about that is most open mics are in terrible rooms and they're not set up at all for comedy. So we have many, many things to say. I've seen in the feedback videos I've been doing, I've seen some crazy stages. One person was performing in front of a working bar, which meant no one could actually get to the bar and order a drink. Another person was in a kind of what you could only describe as a bloody bull ring in the middle of this pub that was so far away from everyone sitting down. They may as well have been in a different room. All of these kind of things can be made fun of. Now, I'm not saying go and absolutely destroy the booker and do it in a mean way. I'm just saying do it in a highlighting way, in an observing way, gets a little bit of a chuckle at the very top of your show, and it brings everybody together. The second thing it does is it gives everybody a brief moment to get used to how you sound in the microphone, get used to how you perform, because there's about 1 million performers performing at these nights. They go on for days. So by you going up there and getting a couple of jokes out at the top of the show that are easy to follow from the audience, well, then you're going to give people enough time to get on board with how you sound and how you act on stage, and then you can go into your written material. And the third thing this does is it gets you a laugh before you commit to your written material, before you start boring them with who it is you are and what you think about politics. You can get a laugh. And how good does that feel to get a laugh even before you kind of officially start? Now, of course, you start the moment your name is mentioned, but in your mind, you'll think, well, at least I have these easy jokes to fall on at the beginning of the set. Gives me a quick time to go, oh yeah, they find my kind of humor funny. Because whatever you're going to say about the observational thing you noticed in the room, that's your style. Whatever you wrote down is your style. I'm not going to tell you how to say it, because that's up to you to fail at and get better at. But it's a really good crutch, and one I still use today. If I'm doing a stand-up comedy show or a prop-based comedy show, I will always open about immediate situations of that environment. And I will go back to it. If I'm doing a few little bits of comedy and I'm expressing myself and I'm bringing them on a journey, I'm always going to go back to the room. I'm always going to maybe do a callback to something I noticed about the room earlier on. Perhaps I have 3 punchlines to one thing I noticed in the room. I'll say the first one at the very top of the show, and then I'll make it so that my material will do a callback to the second punchline I had about that observational thing I noticed in the room. And perhaps later in the set, I'll do a third line, another callback to the same thing in the room, continuously bringing people back to now, right in this immediate place where we're all connected and we all have in common. The second thing is, if you're going to go on stage and open up with this idea, which I think you should, and say material about the room, then you can immediately bring the absurd punchline to the audience. So whatever it is you need to say about something, say there's a photograph on the wall of a person behind you, and you can say, well, at the end we're going to have questions and answers because this person's been missing for a long time now, and you can go dark with the humor. I know I would, and it might get a laugh. The chances are, if someone put a picture or something like that up at this event, it means something to them. So by you highlighting it, it's even a little funnier or more bizarre to go there. And then you can direct that absurd reaction you got to an audience member. Now, I go dark in my humor, you might not. So whatever you're going to say about the thing, that doesn't matter. That's up to yourself. All I'm saying is whatever the punchline you got from this can be connected to an audience member in the front row. Well, what do you think about this? And you could talk about the topic of what the punchline was directly to the person in the front row. If you don't know what to say, you could just ask them a simple question based on what it was you observed. You could just ask them, what do you think about this? And you could have a very, very brief conversation with that and then move on. And you could then that's your transition into getting, are you with this person here? And then you do a little bit of banter with the audience. But how do we do banter with the audience? So it's very, very simple. We could ask them pretty much 2 questions. Now, we don't need to be geniuses at this. We don't need to get excellent at this. We could just say, from now on in my career, when I talk to the audience, I'm going to ask them 2 questions. The first one is, who are you here with? Right? Are they there with a person sitting to the left or the right? If they are, you ask them a few more questions about the relationship. I guarantee you, if you ask them 3 questions about the relationship, they're going to say something that gets a laugh. It's like a cheat sheet. It's just, you don't even need to be funny with this. I guarantee it. Just try it out and it will work. The vast majority of people who ask the audience members questions, the comedian doesn't even do the joke. The audience does it. And all you have to do is interact and repeat what they say in the microphone. And if you go, how long have you been together? And one person doesn't answer and the other person goes 2 years, there's a joke there. You go, well, he's thinking about it and she says 2 years. And the audience will find it funny. It's because it connects everyone together. They all have that experience in common. That's why this bullshit works, and it works every time. Another question you can ask the audience is, what do you do for a living? And whatever it is I say, you pretend you don't know what it is. It will also get a laugh. If you say, I've got no clue what you just said, it's going to get a chuckle from some people in the audience. Is it going to blow the roof off the place? No, because it's a shit joke. But it's going to work a little bit. So now you've opened up the set, you've said something funny about the room, you've connected it to one audience member, and now you're talking to another audience member, and based on what it was they do for a job, or based on their relationship, you can jump from that group of people to another group of people. And let's say the group of people is over this side of the room. You talk about something this side of the room, and when you're finished talking to those people at that side of the room, you notice something about that side of the room. You draw everyone's attention to it. Perhaps there's a balcony with a wall paved over it, and you say, well, we had to put that wall in because we had to stop people from jumping off in the second half of the show because these shows go on a long time. Something like that. You can steal all these lines I'm telling you, by the way, because they're all just rubbish, but they're just immediate connecting lines to use in the room. And I'm passionate about this because it's so easy to do, and so many people aren't using it, and it just makes you so much different than every other comic on the bill, because they are going to be so committed to getting through their entire written set that they're not doing these things that let the room breathe. Be in the room with the audience, and they will absolutely love you for it. And the jokes are easy. And then when you have them and you've done that little bit of this is that and this is that and a humorous thing you can say about the room, the more the better, and a couple of little pockets of conversation with the audience here and there. And remember, stick to 2 things. Your relationship, who are you here with, right? And what do you do, and what do you do for a living? And then that's it. If you just ask those questions, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of it. I absolutely guarantee you. Because whatever they say, you do a follow-up question. And sooner or later, the more you do this, the funnier your thoughts are going to be about it, and the quicker your responses are going to be. You're going to shock yourself if you do this 3 times. You're going to get comfortable doing it, and you're going to be able to think of funny things to say about their relationship or about their job. And of course, if you want to be even funnier and use a cheat sheet, you can write this down at home. Whatever type of job, you could write down IT, and you could write down a couple of jokes about IT, or you write down a type of relationship, or how long people have been in a relationship together, and you're going to write down a couple of jokes about it. And now you're going to open up conversation with the audience. You already have the jokes written down, because the chances are people are going to say, every now and then, they're going to say exactly what it was you wrote down, what they do for a living. They're going to say the exact same thing, because jobs aren't that crazy. If you talk to people at an open mic situation, the chances are they do something that's rather normal, unlike you bloody weirdo going up and expressing yourself in front of people. No one wants to know about your politics, by the way. So let's move on to number 3. Yes, then you can include the whole audience, right? Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, right? If you want to include the whole audience, I know what people are going to say. That opens you up to hecklers. And it absolutely does. This style of performing comedy will open you up to hecklers. But guess what? Hecklers aren't the scariest thing in the world. They can be dealt with very, very easily. All you have to do is, if you have a heckler, is you could say the thing they said aloud. You could just repeat them. If you repeat what a heckler said in a microphone and you do a facial expression to kind of go like, what are you talking about? Or you could do something like that. it's squashed. It's done. The heckler has no ability anymore because you're not letting them breathe. They say an insulting thing to you and you just repeat it and go, well, that was a bit mean. And it's, well, where do we go now? The heckler has you've suffocated them. There's no place for them to go. Even if you do that with no confidence, there's still no place for them to go because everyone's like, oh, okay, well, that's squashed. That's one way of doing it. It's the quickest way of doing it. It might not be the most fun way of doing it. Okay, so we're going to cover hecklers in a second because what I want to say is the important point. If you have something funny to say about the room and then you open up a dialogue with the audience and some bit of information comes alive, there's something you now found out about the people in the front row that you didn't know before. And the great thing about this is everybody in the room found it out at the same time. So now you have a unique piece of information that nobody knew before, and because we all learned it together, we are now completely connected as an audience, right? So all you have to do is bring that one idea to the whole audience. So you can say, who else here, blah, 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 whatever it is. Or does anyone else here think that, blah, 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 whatever it was the person said, you can address it to the whole audience. And you might have something funny to say about it yourself, which means you don't give the audience enough time to respond to the question. You're making it look like you're giving them the time. You're creating the illusion you're allowing them into the conversation. Or you could, if you don't have something funny to say about it, you could genuinely open up a poll for the audience to respond, for a few people to shout back. Now, obviously, yes, that's going to be quite chaotic. And a lot of comedians, when I say about these things, opening up conversations with the audience, they tend to say you shouldn't do that because it will lead to hecklers and it'll lead to people shouting out. And my response is, yeah, brilliant. I don't want to do the same set 2 times in a row. I want the chaos. And I like the chaos. Am I always going to triumph in the chaos? Am I always going to carry the ball and have the audience laugh at everything I say? No, I'm not. But maybe 70% of the time I will. Maybe 80% maybe 80% of the time I can carry it to a successful place. But that's the fun. That's the beauty of it for me. It's not always guaranteed to work. And an audience always appreciates being let off the leash a little bit. These nights are long. Sometimes they just want to have fun. They might not want to listen to all your written material, especially if you're beginning of your career and your written material is a little boring in places and you're not getting to the punchline as quick as you could be. Now, I have to say the vast majority of videos I've done feedback for actually are all bloody brilliant and you are getting to the punchline quicker, but even still, you're thinking that the information points of view don't need to be humorous. It doesn't need to be a punchline. They don't need to be, falling off your seat funny, but they do need to be humorous. Every single piece of information you say does need to be connected to some way with humor. And every single piece of information you say needs to have the potential to be followed up by a joke. Perhaps you don't want to do one after every single piece, but they need the potential. So this video has been all about ways you can break out of the written material and open up the conversation with the audience based on things you have noticed in that room, in the environment you are performing in. Okay, I hope this crazy rant at way too early in the morning when I did 2 shows last night and I was on stage 3.5 hours. I hope this has been beneficial. I'm very tired and I'm going to go and have another coffee. All right, I'll catch you in the next video.